My name is Logan Pierce, and at 39 years old, I never expected my entire life to flip upside down at my uncle's mansion. Picture it. The marble foyer, the gold Rolexes flashing, my cousins popping champagne as the family lawyer read the will. To Tyler and Austin, $24 million in solid gold bars, he announced. To Logan, an old broken chair from my study. I heard the snickers ripple around the room, mockery so loud it might as well have been applause. My face burned as I dragged that creaky, splintered chair out of the room, humiliated. But that night, when I finally tipped it over in my garage, I noticed something no one else had. Something hidden inside that chair that would unravel everything my family thought they knew about. Inheritance, loyalty, and justice. But what I didn't know was, you never forget the sound of your own humiliation, especially when it echoes through the marble halls of a place you once called home. My name's Logan Pierce, I'm 39 years old, and this is the story of how a single broken chair made me the laughingstock of my entire family, at least at first. The scene was straight out of some twisted fairy tale. My Uncle Ray's mansion gleamed under chandeliers the size of small cars, the air thick with perfume, expensive cologne, and anticipation. Gold cufflinks flashed as relatives filed into the study, their eyes hungry for what would come next. My cousins, Tyler and Austin, sat at the front, grinning like kids on Christmas morning. I found myself in the back, hands shoved in my pockets, trying to ignore the weight of every stare. The family lawyer, Mr. Hastings, cleared his throat, the old leather will folder trembling in his hands. Raymond Pierce was a man of great means, and his final wishes are to be respected to the letter. You could feel everyone leaning in. To my nephews, Tyler and Austin, I leave the bulk of my estate, the house in Greenwich, the stocks, the collection of gold bars valued at $24 million. A gasp rippled through the room, then applause, then hugs, then a look back at me. I'd always known I wasn't the golden child, but even I didn't expect what came next. And to my nephew, Logan Pierce, Mr. Hastings went on, his lips twitching like he was holding back a smile. I leave. This. He gestured, and a staff member rolled out a battered wooden chair, the same one that had been gathering dust in my uncle's study for years. The legs were wobbly. One armrest had a crack running through it. A laugh started with Tyler, then Austin, and the rest of the family joined in, their voices bouncing off the marble. My face burned. I tried to laugh along, but it came out thin, almost desperate. Maybe I can sell it on eBay, I joked, but nobody was really listening. My aunt muttered, "Should have left it in the trash," and a second wave of laughter broke out. The worst part wasn't the chair. It was the look in everyone's eyes, the confirmation of what they'd always suspected. Logan Pierce, the loser, the afterthought, the one who never amounted to anything, not in business, not in life, not in the family's eyes. I carried the broken chair out to my car by myself. Every step felt heavier, the voices behind me still jeering. As I loaded it into the back seat, I thought about leaving it on the curb. But something made me pause. Maybe it was pride, maybe stubbornness. Or maybe, deep down, some part of me wasn't ready to believe that was all I was ever going to be. Tyler and Austin wasted no time basking in their new fortunes. Tyler, at 41, was always the image of cocky confidence. Now, with $12 million in gold and a cherry-red Tesla Model S Plaid parked outside, he looked practically invincible. Austin, a year younger and equally smug, showed off his own Tesla in gleaming midnight blue, the gold inheritance barely fitting in the trunk for a staged Instagram shot. Me? I was the invisible man, clutching my uncle's busted chair as if it might suddenly explain my existence. I hovered on the edge of the estate driveway, feeling the weight of every sideways glance. Family members drifted in and out of the house, congratulating the Golden Boys on their good fortune, snapping selfies, and laughing about vacation plans in Bora Bora and Paris. I heard my Aunt Lorraine's voice before I saw her. "Logan, dear, try not to scratch the car with your, priceless antique." Her lips curled in a smile so sharp it could cut glass. I forced a chuckle, hoping no one noticed my knuckles whitening on the chair's armrest. "Maybe I'll open an antique shop," I replied, but she'd already turned away. Tyler swaggered over, gold watch glinting in the sun, and clapped me on the back so hard I nearly dropped the chair. You know, little cousin, Uncle Ray always said you had character. Guess you finally get to show it. Austin snickered. Maybe you can whittle the chair down for firewood when winter comes. It was like I wasn't even there, just part of the scenery, Logan, the background noise to their main event. The chair creaked in my hands, the wood warm from the sun. I set it down, wondering why I even bothered. Every congratulatory handshake, every clink of glasses, seemed to underscore how little I mattered in the grand family equation. I watched Tyler spin his Tesla's keys and Austin take a call from a local reporter wanting a quote about their extraordinary windfall. No one asked me anything, not even if I needed a ride home. It would have been easy to believe them, to accept that this was all there was for me, an invisible man in a family of golden boys. But as the party faded and the sun dipped behind the trees, I caught one last look from Aunt Lorraine, smug, satisfied, certain she knew exactly where I belonged. I almost let myself believe it. I sat on the back porch, the broken chair beside me, replaying the day over and over. The laughter, the stares, the way Tyler and Austin had basked in the spotlight, it all left a sour taste in my mouth. Everyone else was celebrating, but I couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa Walt. He'd always been different from the rest of the family. Quieter, sharper, with a sly smile that told you he was always 5 steps ahead. A memory surfaced, uninvited but suddenly vivid. I must have been 16, working on a stubborn math problem at the kitchen table. Grandpa Walt came in with his old fishing hat and a mug of black coffee. He watched me for a minute before he said, "Logan, you've got good eyes. Most folks only see what's right in front of them. You see what others miss." At the time, I'd barely looked up. Now, years later, that line came back to me with a new sting. Was this chair, this so-called inheritance, actually a test? Was there something here that I was supposed to find? Some secret that Grandpa meant for me alone? I knelt, turning the chair over in my hands. It was just an old wooden rocker, chipped and worn. One leg wobbled so badly I almost laughed. But then I remembered how Grandpa Walt had always favored this chair. He'd nap in it every Sunday after lunch, reading the newspaper or humming along to old Johnny Cash records. No one else was ever allowed to sit in it, not even Tyler or Austin when they were kids. When the grandkids wrestled in the living room, he'd bark, "Careful, that chair's older than all of you put together." I ran my hand along the underside, feeling for anything out of place. Nothing at first, just splinters, dust, and a faded sticker from a hardware store. But then I noticed something odd. A tiny notch carved near one of the spindles, so small I'd never have seen it unless I was looking for it. My pulse ticked up a notch. Was this what Grandpa meant? Had he hidden something here, trusting that I'd be the one to find it? A sharp breeze rattled the porch screens. I leaned back, heart pounding, the chair suddenly heavy with meaning. Maybe this was more than just a broken piece of furniture. Maybe Grandpa had left me a clue, and believed, even if no one else did, that I'd be the one to solve it. But as I ran my thumb over that hidden notch, wondering what it meant, I realized I was standing at the edge of a mystery much bigger than I'd imagined. The next day, the whole family gathered at Uncle Ron's sprawling mansion, a place so big, even the driveway had its own zip code. Gold balloons spelled out. "Congratulations," and the air buzzed with champagne corks and stories about Tyler's investment genius and Austin's philanthropic new Tesla. The whole scene was a coronation, and my cousins were the kings. I tried to blend into the background, but there was no hiding. Aunt Margaret spotted me hovering by the patio and called out, "Logan, could you move some of this old junk to the garage? The gold bars are taking up all the display space." Everyone laughed. I bit my tongue and nodded. My inheritance apparently was manual labor. Tyler posed by the fireplace for a photo op, arms draped around Austin's shoulders, both of them grinning like lottery winners. "Smile, Logan. Maybe next time you'll get a real prize," Tyler said, holding up a heavy gold ingot. The flashbulbs made the gold gleam and made my empty hands feel even emptier. I turned away, hiding the sting. Dad's face was tight with discomfort, but he said nothing. I picked up the broken chair, my heirloom, careful not to let it fall apart, and shuffled it out of the living room toward the garage. As I passed the kitchen, I caught snippets of conversation. "Can you believe Ron left him that thing?" He's always been the odd one out. Probably sell it on Craigslist. Not like he's got anything else going for him." Their laughter burned hot in my ears. Out in the hallway, my foot caught on the edge of an expensive Persian rug. The chair jerked in my grip, wobbling dangerously. For a split second, I thought it would crash to the floor, shattering what little dignity I had left. But I caught myself, steadied the chair, and noticed as I set it down that the leg I'd been holding seemed even looser than before. For a moment, I thought about just dropping the whole thing. Let it break. Give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose even the one thing I'd been given. But I couldn't do it. Something about Grandpa's words kept echoing in my head. You see what others miss. Maybe this was all I had, but maybe it mattered. I carried the chair out to the garage, away from the crowd, heart thumping with a mix of shame, anger, and, just maybe, a strange flicker of hope. Something told me that the story of the chair wasn't over yet. I'd barely set the chair down in the dusty garage when I heard footsteps echoing on the driveway behind me. I turned, expecting to see another family member ready with a fresh round of jabs. Instead, a tall, older man in a charcoal suit stood just outside the garage door. His face was sharp, eyes alert, like someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. "Logan Walker?" he said, his voice low and steady. I nodded, wary. "Yeah." He stepped forward, reaching into his coat. For a split second, my mind flashed to every crime show I'd ever watched, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out a small, thick envelope. It was sealed with red wax, stamped with a strange crest I'd never seen before. "You'll need this," he whispered, pressing the envelope into my palm. His hand was cold, but the grip was firm. "Don't open it here. And don't trust anyone, not yet." Before I could ask him who he was or how he knew my name, he backed away, eyes darting to the mansion windows as if someone might be watching. He moved with the urgency of someone passing a secret message behind enemy lines. I started after him, but he shook his head. "No questions, not now. Read it when you're alone. Everything you think you know is about to change." He turned and strode off down the long driveway, disappearing behind the thick hedges bordering the estate. The whole exchange had taken less than a minute, but my heart was racing. I looked down at the envelope. My name, Logan, was written across the front in precise, old-fashioned script. The wax seal felt heavy with meaning, something ceremonial and private. From the backyard, I could hear my cousins laughing again, glasses clinking, celebrating their $24 million windfall. My aunt's voice floated through the air. "Hope Logan didn't break that chair. Maybe he can at least pawn it for gas money." But in that moment, none of it mattered. The chair, the insults, the gold, they all faded into the background as I stared at the envelope in my hand. For the first time since the will reading, I felt a surge of something new. Not shame, not anger, but possibility. Whatever was inside that envelope, it was meant for me. And suddenly, I knew this story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Uncle Walt's cryptic note, "Look where we started," and turning the old key over in my palm. Before sunrise, I decided to take action. I carried the chair out to the garage, hoping for privacy. That garage used to be our childhood kingdom. Bikes, tools, and the scent of oil and old lumber. It felt almost sacred. I set the chair down and started checking it more thoroughly in the morning light, searching every groove, every loose screw for another hint. Suddenly, the garage door rattled open. The harsh laughter told me exactly who was coming. Tyler and Austin strode in, both in gym clothes, clutching iced coffees, smirking like a pair of TV villains. "Wow, can't believe you're actually taking that piece of junk seriously," Tyler sneered, his voice echoing off the walls. "Did you think it might be magic, Loge? Gonna pull a rabbit out next?" Austin leaned in, grinning. "Maybe you'll find Grandpa's gold stash hidden in a leg. You know, since you didn't get any real inheritance." Their laughter bounced around the space. For a second, old shame threatened to choke me. But this time I kept my face blank, letting their words roll off. I angled myself so my back hid my hand as I slipped the brass key and note into my jeans pocket. "Don't worry about me," I said, forcing a shrug. "Some people value things besides gold bars and new cars." The words tasted braver than I felt. Austin clapped me on the back a little too hard. "You keep telling yourself that, man." When you're done, haul this out to the curb, will ya? Maybe someone'll take pity and give you $5 for scrap." They high-fived, still laughing, and strutted off to their Teslas parked in the driveway. I waited until their voices faded, the heavy garage door thudding closed behind them. My heart was hammering, half from humiliation, half from adrenaline. The old Logan might have let their mockery stick, but now I had something they didn't. A mystery, a mission, and, just maybe, a second chance at belonging. I gripped the chair tighter, its battered wood suddenly meaningful in my hands. If my uncle left this for me, there had to be a reason, and I was going to find out what it was, no matter what my cousins thought. I stuffed the key deeper in my pocket and took one last look at the garage, then at the sun starting to creep through the dusty windows. There was work to do, answers to find. The faded note in my uncle's jagged handwriting kept echoing in my mind. Look where we started. After Tyler and Austin left, I sat in my car gripping the old brass key, thinking hard. It hit me all at once. Uncle Walt's childhood home. I hadn't been there in years, not since the family BBQs of my childhood. It sat on the edge of town, a sagging old craftsman with peeling paint and a leaning porch swing. I drove across town, heart pounding with each mile. The house looked worse than I remembered. Windows clouded, yard overgrown, a faded "for sale" sign toppled in the weeds. No one had lived here since my great-aunt died. I slipped around back, careful not to be seen. The back door still stuck like always. After a hard shove, I was inside. The air was stale with dust and the faint memory of wood polish and Sunday roast. My footsteps creaked across warped floorboards as I made my way to the living room, the place where family stories always began. That's when I spotted it. A rectangular cut in the floorboards, almost invisible, right where the old rug used to sit. I knelt and brushed away dust and splinters, finding a tiny brass lock embedded in the wood. I hesitated. Was I crazy for following a decades-old clue based on a broken chair? But I pulled out the key, hands shaking, and fitted into the lock. It clicked, a clean, satisfying sound that echoed through the empty house. I pried open the trap door, revealing a narrow metal safe bolted into the joists beneath the floor. Inside, the air was cooler. The safe was small, painted black, and rusted at the corners. There was another keyhole, the same size. I slid the brass key in and turned. The lid popped open, and for a second I just stared. Bundles of old documents, a thick velvet pouch, and a yellowed envelope addressed to me, Logan, in all caps. My heart pounded in my chest. Was this what my uncle meant for me to find? Or was I trespassing on a secret meant for someone else? I sat back on my heels, the dusty light streaming through the curtains onto the floor. In that moment, I wasn't the invisible cousin, the one left with junk. I was the only one holding the key to whatever my uncle had hidden all these years. I reached for the envelope, barely daring to breathe. I slid my thumb under the brittle flap of the envelope, feeling the weight of my uncle's secrets in my hand. Inside was a folded legal document, official, notarized, stamped with the family lawyer's crest. It was a revised will, dated only 6 months ago. My breath caught as I read the opening lines. To my nephew, Logan Arthur Benton, I leave that which I value most, honesty, and the chance to set things right. Under the will, I found a stack of old ledgers tied together with a string. My hands shook as I untied the knot. Page after page, I saw handwritten entries, large donations, charitable gifts, and withdrawals. I scanned the details. Benton Children's Fund, withdrawal $50,000. Food pantry grant, canceled. Shelter renovation, funds redirected. The sums matched the value of the gold Tyler and Austin now flaunted. My heart turned to ice. In the margins, my uncle had scribbled angry notes. Not approved. Spencer and Austin forged my signature. Find the truth. I realized with a jolt that the gold coins my cousins received weren't just family wealth. They were stolen from the very charities our uncle spent his life supporting. They'd siphoned money meant for kids and families in need. Tucked in the back was a smaller envelope with a handwritten message. Logan, if you're reading this, you're the only one I could trust. The family name needs justice. Use what you find here to make things right. Uncle Walt. I sank on the dusty floor, the truth crashing over me in waves. I'd spent my life believing I was invisible. left out, unworthy. But my uncle had seen me. He'd chosen me for a reason. The chair was never junk. It was a test, a message, a lifeline. Clutching the documents to my chest, I stared up at the flickering light through the window. How could I confront my family with this? What would Tyler and Austin do if they knew what I'd found? My hands shook as I left the old house, the secret will and damning ledgers stuffed into my backpack. The sun was setting over the town I thought I knew, but everything felt different. I kept replaying the evidence in my head, Uncle Walt's words, the stolen charity funds, the final line, "Make things right." I'd spent my whole life feeling small in this family. Now, I was holding a truth that could blow everything apart. I barely slept that night, staring at the ceiling torn in a dozen directions. If I stayed quiet, Tyler and Austin would get away with it. The children's fund and food pantry, everything my uncle built, would stay lost. But if I came forward, I'd tear my family's reputation to shreds. Could I really do that? What would my parents say? What if nobody believed me? At breakfast, the mansion felt colder than ever. Aunt Louise appeared in the kitchen, lips pursed, arms folded. She never looked at me unless she had something cutting to say. This time her gaze was sharp as glass. "Logan, what are you up to?" she asked, voice low. "Tyler says you've been snooping around. Looking for a handout?" I met her eyes for the first time in years. "No, Aunt Louise. I'm just trying to understand why Uncle Walt left me that chair." She scoffed. "Some people know their place. Others never learn. I suggest you remember which one you are before you embarrass yourself." The words stung, but not as much as they used to. I clutched my backpack, feeling the weight of everything inside. The urge to confess burned on my tongue, but fear kept me silent. That afternoon, I walked through town, watching Tyler and Austin's Teslas gleam in the driveway, hearing laughter spill out of the mansion windows. I saw the soup kitchen, the food pantry, the places our family's name used to mean hope. I pictured what my uncle would want me to do. When I got back, my aunt was waiting in the hallway. "Whatever you're planning, drop it. This family's worked too hard for its reputation." I hesitated, my heart pounding. Sometimes the truth matters more. The next morning, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. My hands shook as I dialed Mr. Grant, the family attorney, Uncle Walt's oldest friend, and the only person I trusted to do the right thing. When I told him I needed to see him immediately, his tone turned serious. In his office, I laid everything on the table. The secret will, the ledgers, Uncle Walt's letter. Mr. Grant's eyes widened as he flipped through the evidence, his face pale. "Logan, where did you find this?" "Inside the old chair. Hidden in the house on Ridgeway. Uncle Walt left me clues. He wanted someone to find this, someone who actually cared." Mr. Grant ran his fingers through his hair. "If this is real, Logan, this changes everything. The estate, the gold, the family foundation, your cousins, they could be in real trouble." He wasted no time. Within the hour, Tyler and Austin were called to the lawyer's office. They swaggered in, confusion and annoyance on their faces. When they saw me, Austin sneered. "What's the matter, chairboy? Need help gluing a leg back on?" Mr. Grant's voice was ice. "Sit down, both of you. We need to discuss some new information regarding the estate." He read aloud from Uncle Walt's secret will, then placed the ledgers on the table. Tyler's face drained of color. Austin's jaw dropped. That's not possible. This is a setup." Mr. Grant shook his head. "The handwriting is Walt's, and these transactions, they show where every ounce of gold came from, and where it was supposed to go. My cousins went from cocky to panicked in seconds. Tyler tried to bluster, but the evidence was overwhelming. "You can't prove anything," he snapped. Mr. Grant looked at me. "Logan, are you prepared for what happens next? This will become public record. The authorities will be involved." I swallowed hard. My whole life, I'd been on the outside, never invited to the table. Now, I was the one holding the power, but I felt no joy, only the weight of responsibility. Austin glared at me, eyes cold. "You think you've won, Logan? You're going to ruin everything for us, for yourself, too." I stood my ground. Uncle Walt wanted the truth. It's time everyone knew. The investigation uncovered more than stolen gold and forged wills. At the lawyer's insistence and with the family legacy in legal limbo, a court-ordered DNA test was performed on all of us. I went through the process numbly, cheek swab in a sterile office, the kind of indignity I'd never expected at 39. 2 weeks crawled by. I returned to my usual life, my modest apartment, my steady but unremarkable job, trying to ignore the texts and calls from desperate family members. When the results finally arrived, Bernard, the family lawyer, called everyone to the office for final clarification. I braced myself for another round of humiliation. Instead, the room fell silent as Bernard read the results. Logan Wallace, you are the only biological child of Walt Wallace. Tyler and Austin froze, their faces pale. There's gotta be a mistake, Tyler sputtered. Bernard shook his head, grave and calm. Your mother's name is on the paperwork, but the DNA is conclusive. Walt Wallace was not your father. Shock rippled through the room. My aunt broke down, sobbing. My mother put her hand on my shoulder. I tried to process it all, years of being the outsider, the extra, the one always last in line for everything. All this time, I'd been the only real Wallace. My emotions churn, vindication, anger, a strange grief for the years I'd spent longing for approval from people who weren't truly my kin. Tyler glared at me, resentment burning in his eyes. Austin just looked lost. As the dust settled, Bernard handed me a new folder. Logan, as the sole heir, the estate and any remaining assets, pending the outcome of the investigation, legally passed to you. I stared at the folder in disbelief. All my life I'd wanted acceptance. Now I had the family name and the legacy that went with it. But what I didn't know was, I sat in Bernard's quiet office, the sun slanting through the dusty blinds, the folder of legal documents heavy in my lap. For the first time, everything, my uncle's fortune, the properties, even the gold, was within my grasp. Tyler and Austin, once golden boys, were now pariahs. The press hounded them, old friends vanished, and their expensive toys seemed to mock their downfall. The temptation was sharp and bitter. 1,000 old humiliations flashed before me. Laughter at my hand-me-down suits, the time I was left out of the family photo, every time I was called the odd one. I could ruin them. I could make them beg, could parade my victory for the world to see. But tucked in the folder, under the will, I found one last handwritten note from Grandpa Walt. Logan, sometimes justice is kindness in disguise. Remember, what you do with power is who you become. The gold in our veins isn't in our vaults, but in our choices. Forgive if you can. Love if you dare. His words echoed, fighting the storm inside me. I could see Tyler and Austin from the window standing in the parking lot, looking small for the first time in their lives. Part of me still ached for payback, but another part, the one Grandpa believed in, wanted something better. A family rebuilt, not destroyed. Maybe there was a third path between revenge and total forgiveness. I closed the folder and took a deep breath. I stood before the courthouse, my name echoing through the marble halls, the weight of judgment hanging in the air. For weeks, the courtroom had been a battlefield. Lawyers arguing, evidence mounting, the truth laid bare for everyone to see. The gold, the forgeries, the betrayal, it was all out in the open now, impossible to deny or hide. When the judge delivered her verdict, it felt like the final thunderclap in a summer storm. The estate of Walt McAllister, including all gold assets and properties, is hereby awarded to Logan Reed, as per the revised and validated will. All claims by Tyler and Austin Reed are denied. This court finds evidence of fraud and orders restitution. Case closed. I barely heard the cheers from my mother or the shocked whispers from the gallery. Tyler and Austin sat hunched over, stunned and pale, as everything they'd boasted about slipped away in an instant. Teslas repossessed, mansions seized, even their precious watches collected as evidence. Their lawyers abandoned them, and the press is now circling for a very different kind of story. Outside, as reporters crowded the steps, Tyler pushed through, his eyes red and desperate. Logan, please, you know we didn't mean for any of this. You're our brother. You have everything now. Can you help us? Austin's voice cracked. We were just doing what we were told. Uncle Walt loved us too, right? Please, don't leave us with nothing." I wanted to feel triumphant, but watching them, my cousins, now humbled and broken, I only felt tired. I remembered Grandpa Walt's words. Justice is kindness in disguise. Could I be the man he wanted me to be? Could I find room for grace after everything? The judge's ruling changed my life, but it also put the final choice in my hands. As Tyler and Austin waited for my answer, I realized the real test wasn't over yet. The next morning, I drove across town to the old brick building that once housed the McAllister Family Foundation. For years, it had been nothing but a shadow, a front for charity that funneled money elsewhere, a sad joke in local circles. Now, with the truth out, it was mine to revive or abandon. I pushed through the glass doors, the echo of my footsteps bouncing off empty floors. A receptionist greeted me with a wary smile. "Mr. Reed? The board's waiting for you in the conference room." Inside, a few board members sat quietly, some faces familiar from my childhood, others new. All of them were uncertain, watching to see what I'd do next. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the weight of responsibility settle onto my shoulders. "My grandfather built this foundation to help people," I began, voice steady, and somewhere along the way, that mission got lost. "I want to bring it back. Real work, real impact. Not just for appearances, but for those who truly need it." The room was silent. Then, slowly, people nodded. Relief, maybe even hope, flickering in their eyes. We spent hours reviewing old projects, brainstorming new ideas, making plans to clean up the records, and reaching out to those the family had once promised to serve. It felt right, like a broken chain finally mending. Afterward, I found myself alone in my uncle's office. Sunlight slanted across the desk, highlighting a faded photograph of him and me fishing when I was 12. He'd written on the back, "Never forget where you started or who you're meant to become." For the first time since this storm began, I felt at peace. I wasn't chasing revenge or validation anymore. I was honoring a legacy and maybe starting one of my own. I ran my hand over the old desk, imagining the countless letters, the hopes and disappointments, the secret burdens Uncle Walt must have carried. Maybe he'd made mistakes, but he'd left me a choice, and I was choosing better. But as I left that office, ready to turn the page, I couldn't shake the feeling that some secrets still lingered. Questions I hadn't yet asked, doors I hadn't opened. The world had changed so fast I almost forgot how much was still missing from my own life. The foundation was back in motion, justice had been served, and the Reed name was making headlines for the right reasons, for the first time in decades. But the biggest wound in my heart still ached. My daughter, Claire, now 16, who'd barely spoken to me since her mother and I split up 4 years ago. But today, as if the universe wanted to test my resolve, I saw her standing outside the foundation. She was taller, a little awkward with her mother's stubborn chin and my eyes. She looked like she was about to bolt, but I raised a hand and called her name. "Claire, I didn't think you'd come." She shrugged, hugging her backpack tight. "Mom said you wanted to talk about family stuff." I nodded, my mouth dry. "A lot has happened, honey. Some good, some ugly. I can't change the past, but I want you to be part of what comes next." I invited her inside, showing her the conference room where we'd mapped out the new direction for the family trust. She sat silently as I explained how the old foundation had failed, how I'd inherited not just money, but a second chance. "This trust, your grandfather started it to help real people. I want you to help me decide where it goes from here. Scholarships, shelters, food banks, whatever you care about. Your voice matters, Claire. I want this to be for you, too." She didn't say anything for a long moment, tracing the edge of the table. Then she met my eyes. "You really mean that? Not just a photo op?" I managed to smile, relief crashing through me. "I really mean it. If you'll have me in your life, if you want to build something new, I'm here." She nodded, lips twitching upward. "Maybe we could start with the animal shelter. They need new heating, and maybe coffee together sometime?" A tear stung my eye, but I blinked it away. Coffee sounds perfect. That day, something inside me healed. A bridge rebuilt. A future rewritten. I thought inheriting money was the biggest thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. Getting a second chance to be a father mattered more than every dollar. But as I watched Claire walk out ahead of me, waving at the staff, I realized some family shadows still loomed. I never imagined my family's name would mean anything good to this town again. But that afternoon, standing on the steps of the Reed Community Center, watching neighbors gather under the spring sunlight, I realized what a real legacy meant. We'd set up tents for free legal help, job training, and scholarships. Dozens of families wandered the grounds, parents pushing strollers, teens with college dreams, older folks who'd once worked in my uncle's factories. The news vans were here again, but this time their cameras captured smiles, not scandal. I gave a speech, my daughter Claire at my side, her hand in mine for courage. My uncle built his fortune here, but not always the right way. I can't change history, but I can write a better future. Starting today, every year the Reed Foundation will invest in our community, not just in dollars, but in trust, in hope, in second chances. Because that's what I was given and what we all deserve. People applauded, some with tears in their eyes. My mom hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Tyler and Austin didn't show up, but word had spread. They were both working, rebuilding their own lives, far from the spotlight. Afterward, I walked through the crowd, listening to stories. One mother whose son got a scholarship, a grandfather who would finally retire in dignity, and a young couple who could buy their first home. Everywhere, people called out my name. But for the first time, it wasn't out of curiosity or pity. It was respect. It was thanks. My old friend Matt clapped me on the back. "You did it, man. You turned a broken chair into a seat at the table for everyone." I smiled, heart full in a way I'd never felt before. Maybe this was why my uncle set things up the way he did. Maybe he saw something in me that even I hadn't seen. Claire slipped a note into my hand as the sun set. "Proud of you, Dad. Let's keep building." As dusk fell and the event wound down, I finally let myself breathe. The Reed name was no longer a punchline. It was a promise. And as I locked up the center that night, I swore to protect that promise for as long as I lived. Late one evening, after the crowds and headlines had faded, I returned home carrying the one thing I almost left behind, the old broken chair. I set it down in my living room, its wood newly polished, the legs finally sturdy again, the seat cushion reupholstered. For the first time, I looked at it not as a punchline or a cruel joke, but as a piece of my story. I sat in the chair, running my hands along the grain, thinking about all that had changed. My uncle's shadow no longer haunted me. Tyler and Austin were out there, struggling to find their own paths. My daughter and I were slowly learning how to be a family again. My mom, relieved and proud, baked pies like nothing bad had ever happened. That night, the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I let myself reflect on shame, on anger, on the storm of betrayal that once consumed me. I'd spent years believing my worth depended on someone else's approval, someone else's idea of what family meant. But the truth, I realized, had always been in my hands. All it took was a broken chair and the courage to look a little deeper. Outside, the town felt different. Neighbors waved as they walked their dogs. Kids played in yards where foreclosure notices had once hung. The Reed Foundation was already helping real people, not just making headlines. For the first time, the name Reed meant something good. I closed my eyes, sinking into the chair's gentle creak, and thought of Grandpa Walt's words. "You see what others miss." I finally understood what he meant. Anyone could spot gold in mansions, but it took grit to find the value in what was nearly thrown away. There was still pain, regret over lost years, relationships that might never heal, mistakes I couldn't undo. But there was also peace. I was no longer just a leftover, the one who got the broken chair. I was the one who fixed it, who chose to forgive, to build, to carry on with dignity. The old chair beneath me wasn't a throne, but it was mine. It had carried secrets and held me through storms. Now it would hold my daughter as she read, or my friends when they visited, or maybe, one day, my own grandchild. As I leaned back, I felt the circle close, not to end the story, but to begin a new chapter, shaped by the choices I made, the love I gave, and the respect I finally claimed for myself. A few weeks after everything had settled, I decided to finally give the old chair one last inspection before moving it into my office. Something inside still felt unfinished. I ran my fingers beneath the seat, tapping gently on the frame. Suddenly, click. A panel slid loose. My heart kicked up, half expecting to find nothing but dust. Instead, tucked deep in the hollow of the chair's armrest was a folded letter. The paper was yellowed and brittle, written in my uncle's unmistakable looping script. My breath caught as I opened it. Logan, if you're reading this, it means you finally saw what everyone else ignored. I left gold for your cousins, but I left you something better. A choice. You could have thrown this chair away, and no one would blame you. But you didn't. Real gold isn't in coins or bars. It's what you do for others, even when nobody's watching. It's the foundation you build, the family you heal, the dignity you fight for. I knew you'd find this because you were always the one who looked deeper. When you wonder if you deserved more, remember, the world measures wealth in dollars. The wise measure it in meaning. Uncle Walt! I sat back, stunned, tears welling in my eyes, not from pain, but from relief and understanding. Every humiliation, every moment of feeling less than had brought me here, to the answer hidden in plain sight, waiting for the one person who wouldn't give up. The shame I'd carried over that broken chair had turned to pride. The final key wasn't gold or property, but a simple lesson. True value is what you give, not what you get. I looked up, meeting the eyes of those watching, maybe you, on the other side of this screen. My voice, steady now, finally carried the truth. Sometimes the thing you're ashamed of is what saves you. Sometimes the real gold is hidden where nobody thinks to look. He smiles, finally at peace. If you believe true value is hidden in plain sight, do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe. Because the world needs more stories where ordinary things turn out to be extraordinary, and where the ones left out end up holding the final key.